plan to.
All right. Great. Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar today. I'm Kalyan, co-founder and CEO of Almabase, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Ellie Fergon, Director of Special Events at California State University, Bakersfield. Ellie has been associated with the university for nearly 8 years. She's also an avid cook and has received professional training from the Culinary Institute of America. She left the culinary industry to join CSU Bakersfield in 2013 and says it's the best decision she's made towards achieving her career goals. Thank you, Ellie, for taking the time to do this and sharing your ideas with everyone here. I want to quickly run through some logistics of how this will work. In case you're new to this, as attendees, all of you are muted by default. Only panelists will be unmuted. Feel free to ask questions anytime during the webinar. You don't have to hold your questions till the end. To ask a question, just simply type it in on the chat below. We'll just respond to the questions as soon as we're able to during the webinar. The slide deck that we're going to be using, as well as the recording of the session, will be sent to each of you, so you can just sit back and listen in. We're also going to have a couple of live polls to help us gather feedback from everyone attending today. And I request that you participate and share your thoughts there. Logistics out of the way, let's dive in. To start with, at Almabase, we're always looking for ways to support and grow the alumni relations and advancement profession. And I'm personally very passionate about doing this because it all started with my own personal experience. This is my co-founder, Sri, and we met in college in India, which is where we were from. Right. And while we were still in college, we got involved in a situation, where a lack of scholarships led to a personal struggle for both of us. At that point, we, temporarily sort of ended up contacting alumni, raising some money, and, prevented not just us, but several students from being forced to drop out, which we then ended up, establishing a nonprofit organization to sort of continue this effort at our alma mater. But through that entire experience, what we realized was that the relationship between alumni and their alma maters was broken, not just at our institution, but at most educational institutions globally. And that's actually what led to the creation of Almabase several years ago. Today we've come a long way. We currently help hundreds of universities and schools, cultivate meaningful lifelong relationships with their alumni. This requires institutions to be alumni-centric and provide value to alumni before seeking value in return. Right? That's why, I'm really excited about today's topic, which is how do you continue to engage alumni? How do you continue to provide value while addressing Zoom fatigue? Right? That's why I think this topic is very important. So last March, when the entire world turned upside down with the pandemic and stay-at-home orders, pretty much every educational institution transformed their events strategy essentially to go virtual. Right? A lot of these were, interestingly, like for like replacements for, where the in-person interaction now happened on Zoom. Right? We all started attending our work meetings on Zoom, started talking to family, using other similar video conferencing tools. But what none of us saw coming then was, how much fatigue and frustration this life of back-to-back Zooms would lead for ourselves and for our constituents. Right? Just a caveat here, even though I'm using the word Zoom, this is true for any video conferencing platform, whether it's Microsoft Teams or Google Hangouts or WebEx or whatever you use. The issue we're talking about here is not the tool, but the format, right? Everybody's feeling overwhelmed, right? But if you're, in a position where you're looking to drive alumni engagement, but can't do in-person meetings, how do you actually tackle this, right? As advancement professionals, it's important that we need to adapt to this kind of change quickly, right? The move from events to virtual events was obviously a big change that we were forced to make last year. I'm actually seeing another wave of change where every institution is creating programming that relies less on video conferencing tools like Zoom, right? I've seen institutions just reduce the number of virtual events and being okay with less engagement to deal with this fatigue, right? But it doesn't actually need to be that way, right? It just requires a mindset shift, and we just need to get more creative. right? I wanted to actually, Ellie and I wanted to make this webinar very actionable. So we've packed it with real examples as much as possible. And I requested Ellie specifically to join us on this webinar because I thought at CSU Bakersfield, they've thought a lot about Zoom fatigue and actually redid their entire sort of homecoming programming with this consideration in mind, right? And Ellie is also now rethinking future programming with these considerations, right? So I'm pretty sure all of you will find her ideas extremely useful. And after Ellie presents her ideas, I'll walk you through a few more ideas from other institutions as well. So hopefully this will be interesting for all of you. I'll actually hand it over to Ellie at this point. Ellie, do you mind walking us through how you've adapted your homecoming plan recently and how you're thinking about programming going forward?
Yes, thank you. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks to everyone for joining us. I know that we're around the world, we're all in the same boat. And I think that allows us to come together a little bit easier. We know that we can learn from one another and really help one another. So I'm happy to be here and share. So I'm going to share my screen now. So this is me, and I'm from CSU Bakersfield. I have been there, as was announced already, about 8 years. I love it here, being on a campus, as many of you, it looks like you are. I think that engagement is, really what we're all striving for. And that's something that we lost when, this hit a year ago. And it did take us some time to adapt and to figure out where and how we were going to have events again. So a little bit about CSUB. We are part of the CSU system. There's 23 campuses. We're one of the younger universities. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. But we have come from a place of very little and really starting to push to the top. And some of these stats can show that, from turning into a CSU shortly after we opened. We are number 52 in the 2021 best colleges in the West, which, if you know, there's a lot of institutes, not just in California, but the Northwest, all and up and down the coast. And so we are a young university, and that provides a lot of challenges for us. First and foremost, with alumni, we don't have that many alumni, and we are growing our student enrollment every year. We're still very, very small. We're just barely over 11,000 students, but that still allows us to have close contact with our students and close contact with our alumni. Many of our alumni stay in this county, which is huge. So we're growing those relationships as we get older. Going into the Zoom fatigue, I think we can all relate again, that the Zoom and this platform, this virtual platform, is not easy. But something that we jumped into, as we transitioned into the virtual event world last March, we did take some time. We didn't want to overwhelm our guests, overwhelm us. Zoom was something that I used for interviews. That's it. So having to relearn a platform, we gave ourselves some grace. And I think we're still giving our whole team and our guests a level of grace as we continue to embark on this. But as a system, we took it as a system-wide approach, and our leadership was really inspiring to us. And so I think that's what gave us a really big push at the start of this academic year with some of our alumni events and other events. My department manages not just alumni events, but president's events, donor engagement events, fundraisers, things like that. So if I focus on alumni, we have two main alumni events, and one's in the fall and one is homecoming, which I'll focus on today. The one in the fall, we we thought this definitely cannot be something we skip. This has to be something we stay engaged. It's a lot of our younger alumni, faculty and staff, and even some students. So we kicked off the year with that fundraiser. It was very successful. We were able to use our Alma-based platform. It was the first test of that, and it was fantastic. Additionally, they've handled some alumni mentor programming, which is in pre-pandemic, still semi-hybrid. It's about a hybrid. We do some in-person events, but really the mentees and the mentors meet, virtually. They email. They have their own kind of agenda with their mentoring. So that was not a huge drop in engagement. But there were some things that we did decide to cancel because the main point of those events, holiday mixers, social gatherings, were that face-to-face. It wasn't a big fundraiser. So instead, the idea was to really continue engaging through, picking up the phone and making those holiday thank you phone calls. And instead of social gatherings, sending something out saying, "Hey, we miss you, but here's a special token from alumni that you can keep and you can have at home." But by the time January hit, we were still very much feeling this zoomed out attitude. Many people were returning to in-person offices, and the thing with alumni is they're not your faculty staff constituent. You don't know where they work necessarily. You don't know their personal life as much. So with being able to understand that they are not working the same as we are, we have to adapt to what they want as well, while still abiding by the rules here. So, opening up and talking to the board of directors, talking to alumni in the community was something that we wanted to do. We wanted to know what they wanted. So one thing that we did realize is they still wanted to be involved. There was a lack of commitment for virtual events. So we did want to rethink and step away from Zoom specifically. So what does that look like? You kind of have to get creative. So when January came around, we were looking at homecoming. Homecoming is in our February basketball season. So we have a gala. It's a Hall of Fame gala that kicks off the week of homecoming. And, one thing we wanted to do was still use this as a fundraiser, which is, annually is. We induct about 3 to 5 alumni from the university, and we took this opportunity to not only induct people that weren't necessarily in town, but also change our sponsorship packages, change our the opportunity, and through that we garnered more donations and more sponsorship than we have in past years. And not just because our expenses were lower, but because we found that people still wanted to be engaged. And they realized that we were giving them more opportunity, that we were changing and adapting for them. And I think that definitely helped. But in the meantime, knowing that we want this gala, and we want this gala to kick off virtually or not the week of homecoming activities, that meant that we had to really look at that week of events and eliminate what was not essential, eliminate what we thought people would ignore, and focus on what we wanted them to focus on, push out the ideas to them so that they felt inclined to attend these virtual events, and we weren't pushing them to be in front of a screen all week long. So one idea we had was to stream our main gala, our main Hall of Fame event, on a televised broadcast. And we usually have a partnership with our news station, and that really allowed us to have that conversation and say, hey, can we get this on TV? It's free this year. This is the one time that we have to not charge guests. Um, Although they won't be getting a nice dinner and a beautiful environment, but we have that opportunity to give this event to thousands of people. So that was our first kind of creative element that allowed us to push our limits. And I suggest that because if you think of your virtual event as it is an in-person event, you'll come up with obstacles after obstacle. But if you put it in a different category altogether, you're forced to think creatively and forced to um, change those event models to fit that platform. So that's what we did, shifting that focus to sponsorship and acknowledgement of those inductees. That was really special for those inductees to still receive um, acknowledgement, if not more than they would have at the in-person event. We also did stream to social media. We had Facebook Live on multiple channels through the news station and through alumni. And at later time, after it was recorded, we did, and it lives on YouTube. So having those different options was really helpful to us to also get it done and then sit back and relax. Because if you're on the back end of these events, um, there's a lot of moving parts, and during the event, you're that tech producer, and that's something that we aren't used to doing at in-person events. We're checking the food, we're decorating the room, we're making sure that the script is going right. So having that completely different role for events is difficult, and being able to highlight this on TV and sit back with family and friends was really nice. So it was nice for us, and it was nice for guests. um, I think with all of that, knowing your audience is going to be key. We had to define who we wanted to watch this event. And we did know that a lot of these guests didn't want to sit in front of a computer, especially on a Saturday night. Computers tucked away, we're done with that. But the TV is on. So having that TV was an easy thing to advertise. You can use a social media app on your smart TV. You can use your broadcast channel. So easy ways to tune in. Also, well staffing. Whether you're broadcasting or you're using a Zoom platform, a webinar platform, making sure that everybody behind the scenes is, one, well versed in what their role is, but two, they feel that their role is necessary and their job. I'm not moving around to 10 different things, but my role is music, or my role is signage, changing the spotlight on individuals, or monitoring the chat, things like that. So whether you have a small team or a big team, having everybody with their roles is very important. And we still did that leading up to this event, and throughout the events the following week. Keeping your Zoom or broadcasted event in the same light as a virtual or an in-person event was also something that we wanted to continue. Whether that's music, information, and signage throughout the event, making sure that these guests felt like they were well informed, and they had the tools that they needed to watch or at least enjoy and participate, was something that we continue to do in small, large, whatever platform we're using. And then lastly, the gifts. We really wanted people to feel that they were well appreciated, whether they donated $100 or $10,000. We had tailored gifts throughout every level of sponsorship, and made sure that they were received in time, that they, when opened, really got excited. And every piece that they received made sense to the event that they were about to watch. And that was really, really important to us, that some of these folks we didn't necessarily know. You know, we gave these sponsors the opportunity to tell us who they want these gift packages mailed to. So it was almost like a blind date. It was our introduction to these individuals. And we wanted them to open that box up and say, wow, I'm excited to watch this on Saturday night. So that was a really, really important piece of the event puzzle that we managed. So again, to kind of discuss some of these events, Hall of Fame, as I mentioned, was something that we completely changed and transformed. We did change this into a normally about 2.5 hour event, obviously including dinner and social, to a straight 60-minute event. With that, we gave those sponsors the opportunity to provide commercials. And so instead of watching the news in the morning and seeing just whatever commercial is thrown at you, our commercials and our sponsorship advertisements were theirs and their exact language. So they were seen in a much larger light. And I think that that was very much appreciated. We also really focused on the inductees and their night. They would normally have, you know, a table or more of their family and friends. They would have the opportunity to get up and give remarks, and they would have their light really shone on them for the work that they've done as our proud alum. So instead, you know, we did make sure that they were highlighted through stories leading up to the events, interviews. We gave them plenty of gifts for their their enjoyment for the night of the event, and then had some beautiful videos made to share that evening. So it was a, I think, well-rounded, from 2 or more weeks prior to the actual event. They were our focus, and I think that they definitely shared later that they felt, you know, appreciated. The Rising Runner Talk. So this is something I have not mentioned yet, but as I mentioned, the Hall of Fame event kicked off the week. So we would have multiple events throughout the week that highlighted our campus alumni, alumni rising runners, so younger alumni. We would give them the award of each school choosing a rising runner. So we are the road runners. So runner is our kind of name for us here. So instead of just cramming these 5 alumni into one Zoom, competing for the chance to talk, we decided, let's focus each one with their school and have a small intimate time with students, the school dean, this alum, and give them that opportunity to be highlighted and supported. So this kind of butts heads with our Zoom fatigue, because instead of one event, we're adding 5 events. So we struggled with this idea, but at the end of the day, we thought, we're not asking the same, you know, 50 people to attend all 5 events. There were a few of us that by Thursday, we were having a tough time. But again, we're on the back end. This is our job. We weren't worried about ourselves. But these rising runners had the opportunity to have the whole time to themselves and really engage with students. And we empowered these school deans to lead and to really begin this connection with their alumni, with the students, and even some of their faculty who attended. So at the end of every day with these events, everybody was very thankful that they could come to their school's rising runner and really focus on that person, instead of coming and seeing their person and then leaving and waiting for the next, you know, 4 to do their thing. So that was something that we again, we struggled with and had to make that tough decision of, if we're going to overload this week, how are we going to focus and hone in on who is coming and who is focused on these Zooms. And then lastly, for the Hall of Fame or the homecoming week, we normally have an event, and the invitation is there on the right. We would normally have an event that would just acknowledge the faculty and staff who are alumni, and they work on campus, and come over for a lunch. You get a little free takeaway, and we play a game. It's a much loved event on campus every year. Well, we can't get all these individuals lunch. We can't, assume that they want to play a game in the middle of the day on homecoming week. So instead, we urge them to attend our other events, show their support, and we would give them a gift. And so what we did was we sent them a lovely mug. So we have had a lot of success with themed events in the past. We put together a kind of a camping mug. It's not glass. It couldn't break in the mail. It was very important to us. And we had a note created on top, a visual that was just thanking them for being part of our pack, our kind of group here that is very close knit. And so we used kind of a play on other themes that we've used in the past, kind of a camping leader of the pack idea. And it was just darling. I got one in the mail, even though I'm not alum. You have to include yourself, so you know what it feels like to receive those items. And it was great. So this was just one of many that we're sending out. So people are constantly reminded, I am appreciated, and I'm not asked to do too much, but I am acknowledged for what I already do. And that continues to be a big focus of ours. Some results here. So overall through AlmaBase, we did receive almost 240 event registrations. With that, with Hall of Fame and the homecoming site, we asked for, or we provided an opportunity for individuals to additionally donate. We didn't collect sponsorships through AlmaBase. We have a corporate and development department within advancement that handles all of that. So through AlmaBase, we used the gift and a specific ticket for the events. So folks could give at any level, or if they gave at a $50 level or $100 level, they did get certain acknowledgement through our digital event program, as well as our online recognition. So through that, we brought in about $3,000 just in $50 to $100 donations. For the homecoming activities, we averaged about 40 guests per Rising Runner Talk. And again, normally this is one event on the Friday of that week, and we have about a 100-person attendance. So we did great. For those, so we had a really focused group, fantastic questions throughout the event. So, hitting that 40-person, and some, went up to about 60 with students and faculty for those schools. Those were very successful. For the alumni registration, it was a little bit lower than what we thought. We usually have about 100 people at the in-person lunch. We had about 50 campus alumni registered, so a little bit less than we assumed. So with that, we decided to gift the mug that I showed to other folks that had been involved with the week of activities. So all the deans, all the nominators who helped with the Rising Runners, the president's cabinet, who is a very supportive group of administrators. So we looked around campus, and from alumni decided to really show our appreciation to not just alumni, but their support of alumni. So overall, we raised nearly $40,000 instead of about 15 to 20 is what we normally do. And having less event expenses was obviously a huge help in that, but it was definitely a difference from past years. So overall, some of our lessons learned, guests really just want to experience something new. And once we got that in our heads, we can't compare to in-person events. We have to think of this with its own goals. What event goals are there? And as a supporter, what do I want to see? But the guests are still there in one way or another. And if we can provide something even slightly unique and fun for them, they'll be willing to attend. Our numbers will look different. Can't compare that to in-person numbers at all. But I think that we have to keep striving for something new. We had to force ourselves to treat these events as something completely separate. And I think starting from a place of this is what we did, but this is our new goal is completely okay to do. And with that goal in mind, changing the goals. Really the only goal in this event, the Hall of Fame event, that was the same is acknowledge our inductees. And through that, we changed practically every element that was associated with that event. But donors still want to give. And if you have a fundraiser that you're focusing on, looking at the donor side of that and what would make them feel special, what would allow them to participate and be acknowledged. And there's many ways that we can continue to do that. One thing that we continue reminding us in my department is we have a small community, we have a small group of alumni and a smaller group of donors. So what does that mean? It's the same donors at these events and it's the same group of individuals. So that makes our job even a little bit harder. If we go from event to event, we change the floral, we change the food, the awardees on stage are different. So that's enough. But when we look at what they're going to watch and how they're going to watch and what they're going to receive in the mail, we've been very focused on making sure that if they receive a gift package from a February event, that's the March event, is significantly different. And they feel that, they know that. It's from CSUB, but it's a different department, it's a different idea, and they want to keep giving. So that continues to be a big goal of ours. I already mentioned focus on the event goals before planning. And through this process, you can really then eliminate what's not essential. What events can we push? What events can turn into a newsletter? What events can turn into a video and share with a thank you email and urge people to participate and have a give button. So those are the type of things that through those event goals, we can kind of determine what events are necessary and what events can be replaced with something else. And obviously with that, we're changing. We're constantly changing and learning to adapt. And, I think I put this on here because it's still a reminder that I need because change is hard. And we're planning for events even in May and thinking, could the whole county be vaccinated by then? And we're still doing virtual events. So we're constantly having those fears and those conversations. And through that, we're adapting and we're changing. So it's definitely a constant learning. So back to our homecoming page, using Alma Base was really life-changing for us. Having everything in one space was really great. So knowing that we could get folks to come to one spot and see all of the alumni homecoming activities that we were planning was really game changing. So we did have everything focused on one. This, we went back and forth in a conversation, do we want each of these components to be on their own or combine them? So we did decide to put them all together. We did have a schedule here so that if people didn't want to scroll, they could see it all. Each Rising Runner Talk, the Hall of Fame event, and the Campus Alumni Appreciation. We do, as I mentioned before, we link to as many things as we could. Each of these sponsors links to their website. We had our virtual runner talks. And again, each of these links to more details on the individuals. Our Campus Alumni Appreciation, they could register here even just for that and not even go to the other events. And then lastly, our homecoming, that was really student focused. We do work with them a lot, although we are slightly separated in our planning. We did want to make sure that they were acknowledged here, and this goes directly to their website as well. Now, the other part of Alma Base that we used throughout that whole week was our guest kit. So our announcements page with the individual guest kit was really great for us. On the back end, we were able to add all of our announcements and then just publish, unpublish throughout the week, every day as we receive new information. Leading up to that, we definitely focused on Hall of Fame. This is our event that's on YouTube now. So before, we were streaming to YouTube and we had a ways to watch. So we made sure that visually we sent out this card, printed and digitally, so people knew: visit YouTube, visit Facebook, visit your TV, all the ways that you can watch. Post event, we made sure to share it here. For the Rising Runners, we definitely, this was updated every single day with announcements so that they knew who was going to be on that talk and the event when it was completed. So each day we urge people to visit their guest kit and see who the new talk was going to be about, or in case they missed it, watch the video. And lastly, we had for just about every event we do, especially if it's a Zoom meeting type of event, we make sure that our Zoom backgrounds are changing, are fun. If people care to use them, that they have that opportunity, and it's accessible. So we really made sure our Alma Base registration page and guest kit were filled with information, got people excited throughout and after the event. So a quick roadmap to where we're going. Our main goal still is just to stay engaged, and we don't know what that means necessarily for the future, but we have a feeling it's going to be a hybrid of in-person and virtual. And obviously, back to that last slide, we're here for the ride, and we're willing to adapt and make those changes as necessary. But our alumni's main focus is mentoring, webinars to keep their alumni engaged, and then smaller little end of year celebrations with board members, with donor acknowledgement still throughout the whole year, and making sure they know their impact was made. Well, we have a great team in the alumni department, and they share alumni stories in newsletters, through social media constantly, getting the word out for our anniversary year and who they're celebrating. And then as we look forward to the fall of 2021, we are launching a comprehensive campaign. It's CSUB's first, as we close out the anniversary year. So we have a lot to look forward to. So I think whether virtually or hybrid or in person, our goal is to take what we've done all year and really focus on the guest experience at the end of the day. So I hope that that was what you all wanted to hear, and definitely open for any questions.
Thanks so much, Ellie. That was super detailed and insightful. There were a few questions, but just in the interest of time, I'd love to kind of just wrap up all of the ideas and then get to the questions, if that's okay. So, inspired by conversations with Ellie and others, this is a simple framework that, I just jotted down based on these conversations, right? I think a few important considerations, you could start with just listing down all of your events and really clearly define what is the goal and purpose of that event, and then look at which of those events can be eliminated. And for those that you do not want to eliminate, how do you present it in a different format, right? Like, you can still continue to provide the same value, or in some cases more value, to the same audience. So, these are some ways to think about it, right? Like, can you do live stream instead of Zoom, right? Like, can you pre-record those elements and then live stream them? Or can you think about synchronous versus asynchronous, right? Like, for example, if a program requires participants to be available in that moment, maybe for a discussion, right? Then obviously those events require synchronous communication, but many programs can actually be adapted towards asynchronous communication, right? Where participation can happen anytime, anywhere, right? For example, let's say you share an alumni story in video format, right? In a way that all your alumni can access it. That encourages asynchronous participation, right? Because alumni can be anywhere, they can access it whenever they want. And that's a big benefit, right? And I think as the restrictions from the pandemic begin to relax further, I think hybrid models will certainly emerge, like Ellie was pointing to. So I think, those are some simple questions to ask in terms of how to rethink the format of your programs. Hopefully that is helpful. I also wanted to show you a few concrete examples of alumni engagement programs that are not necessarily events, right? But I think these are some interesting opportunities for you to rethink your programming to continue to engage your alumni while addressing Zoom fatigue, right? Podcasts is a great medium, in my opinion, right? I mean, it's a great way to engage alumni. A lot of institutions, continue to just do content, which is essentially stories of their alumni, right? I mean, trust me, it's become significantly easier to produce podcasts these days, compared to, let's say, a couple of years ago. The tools, the best practices, they're all available to access, right? And on a side note, we're actually starting our own podcast at Alma Base, where we will be actually featuring stories and ideas from advancement professionals around the country, right? So I think the interesting thing about podcasts is that people can listen to them while they're driving or exercising or during their morning run. So it presents a slightly different format for people to consume your content, and while they're listening to the podcast, they just feel more connected to your institution, right? This particular example is from Emerson College, which as I see is doing their season 2. So clearly a program that's worked for them. I'd encourage all of you to take a look at this page and maybe take a quick listen when you can. We'll share the slides again with the link, so I won't go into a lot of the details here. Alumni Stories is obviously not new, right? The written format for Alumni Stories continues to be popular. People love reading and getting inspired by stories of fellow alumni. And again, similar to podcasts, right? Like your alumni can now read them whenever they want, wherever they are, right? So, one thing that's actually worked really well for many institutions is to do stories based on specific themes, right? Like, rather than just a generic sort of alumni stories, specific themes. In this particular case, I picked the example of Antioch College. They did this campaign for 100 years of co-op, right? Or the cooperative education program, where students get field-based experiential learning during college, right? And they specifically asked alumni to contribute their co-op stories, and they got a ton of great stories, right? This is the actual page. Right, they're able to actually gather a ton of good stories from their alumni and be able to obviously reuse that content to be able to engage their alumni. I thought this was really smart as well, right? And another interesting idea for me, another interesting format is AMAs, or Ask Me Anything. AMA is a pretty simple idea if you think about it. I mean, essentially you'd bring in a popular alum on board and invite other alumni or students to basically ask them anything, right? This creates meaningful conversations along with a ton of content that you can reuse elsewhere, right? This particular example is from Tatnall School in Delaware. I've seen these done on Zoom as well. Like you could do an AMA on Zoom, but it's also possible to do these on just text-based platforms like Slack or Reddit, etc. So you could definitely do this without using Zoom. Again, I'll share this link with all of you as part of the slides. I won't go into a lot of the details here. Again, this idea of live streams really struck me as I was talking to Ellie before the webinar. I mean, we by converting some of the content into live streams, right? The thing that really struck me was how the experience completely changes, right? Like if I have to be on Zoom to watch something, I'm probably at my work desk at home or using my phone. But if I have to just watch a live stream, I can do that in my living room on my big television, with the whole family, right? It's a completely different experience. And I think that's what is interesting about live streams. What's also useful, like Ellie mentioned, is you could then reuse the same content and make it available, for alumni to consume later as well, right? This particular example I picked up from Michigan State, but the idea is similar, right? One last sort of idea here was business directories. I mean, alumni business directories have obviously become quite popular over the last 12 months. Again, a great way to continue to support your alumni and be resourceful as a university, right? While continuing to engage them, alumni can access this whenever they want, wherever they are, which is again, allowing you to continue to engage alumni all the time without necessarily having to bring them on Zoom, right? I did have a live poll here, but I think I'll skip this, in the interest of time. We do have many, many more ideas that we're gathering, from institutions around the country. We have this series called Alma-based Spotlights on our website. Feel free to check that out for sort of very real examples of programs and campaigns that have worked, for institutions like yours. I just want to show you a couple of quick pieces of the Alma-based software, which I think are helpful in this conversation, right? One thing is, like I showed you, being able to create content directories like this. It could be used for stories. It could be used for example, in this case, an institution used it for alumni business directory. So you can essentially have content being displayed as a directory. And then the best part is that you're able to actually measure engagement. So you're actually able to then look at, okay, like each of these content directories that we've published, what kind of engagement are we seeing? How many touch points have we recorded? And which are the alumni that have actually engaged? And then sort of also categorize them as experiential engagement versus philanthropic engagement, etc., which I believe is a massive advantage during this time. Because if you're able to continue to engage alumni while you're sleeping, when they're just accessing your content and, you can just continue to engage them in meaningful ways and you're able to measure that I think is a superpower. And I think, this particular product of ours, actually, for anybody that's attending this webinar, we are actually, to make this deal sweeter, we're actually offering this for free, completely free of cost for the first 10, institutions that reach out to us from this webinar. If you want to try it out, feel free to just drop your details here and we'll reach out to you with some more information. And obviously the event registration page as well. Ellie showed us their event registration page that was built on Alma-based with all of the details and the schedule. What's also interesting is you can actually have your live streams embedded within the guest kit as well, right? So you can actually allow for alumni to watch the live stream right here without having to, for example, be on Zoom, right? So yeah, so those are a couple of things that I wanted to cover. I will sort of stop here to make sure we have time to take some questions. Let me just go here and make sure I got all the questions. Ellie, there's a question from Kimberly Morrison. Was your event streamed on the local station's website as well, or was it only television?
It was television, YouTube, and their Facebook. So okay. I don't believe, I think after the fact, they had the video streamed on their website as one of the stories, but it wasn't a live feed on their website.
Yeah. There's another question which I'll let you take a shot and then I can add some comments as well. Alec asked this question: what do you think the takeaway post-COVID of Zoom/streamed events is? A lot of staff at a lot of institutions now have a new skill set in terms of virtual events. So does this have a place in the future with in-person events potentially returning? I think it's a great question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I'm excited to see what the answer is actually, and I think it's going to change for every institution and every event. I think yes, it's one thing that we've really appreciated is being in touch with alumni that wouldn't attend in-person events. They don't live here, and that's something that everybody's alumni base you deal with. But the other side of it is we do have a large piece of our donor pool and our local group that just doesn't use computers like we do. They don't want to log into an event. They want to get up and go and be present in that setting. So I think there is going to have to be a hybrid style of event. But I do think that using videos and using those skills that we have picked up and realized we can reach more people that way, those will stay. I think doing every event virtually, I hope not, and I definitely think that that's not going to happen. But kind of finding and using some of these statistics of which platforms were most well received. Let's do those. Let's keep putting things on YouTube, or let's have that partnership with our local TV station. Those are things that we can continue most definitely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think literally every institution that I've spoken to has basically said we've got more alumni engaged over the last 12 months than we've had in the 12 months preceding that, right? Because location is no longer a constraint. You've got all sorts of new alumni engaging with your virtual events. And so, even after the pandemic, even after it's completely safe to meet in person again, I'm definitely seeing a future where, there will be in-person events, but there will also continue to be a lot of programming that's virtual, not necessarily always on Zoom, right? But continuing to produce content that you can allow for alumni to consume and engage with whenever they want, right? So I think that's something that I definitely expect will continue. There's a couple of other comments here, but I don't see any other questions. If there are any final questions, please feel free to drop them on chat. I will give this one more minute. Ellie, in the meanwhile, any other final closing thoughts, anything else that you wanted to mention?
Sure. I did see someone send a comment earlier that just asked what were some examples of our gifts, since we did focus on those a lot. And so our main focus was that we wanted people to feel like they could open up this box and really stay at home and enjoy the event. So we branded with multiple different logos, and we're very cautious and not over branding, obviously. We did work with a local winery that we again, we're a small community. We're not in wine country necessarily, but we're just east of a very prominent wine country, Paso Robles, and so we have a big wine appreciation, I'll say. So there is a local winery that we've partnered with throughout many events this year. They've done custom labels on champagne, wine packs, and then included those in gift boxes with our logoed wine glasses, champagne flutes. We've also used our presenting sponsors and given them an opportunity to be on a picture frame. It's a beautiful wooden engraved photo frame with that co-branding. And then for our top sponsors, we did provide some edible items. So kind of a gift basket of charcuterie things that they can just open up and enjoy with their beverages. And all of it was still branded. So a cutting board, everything can go in their cupboards and they can pull out at any given time and see our name on it. So that was a big idea for us to make sure that our name was on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, I missed that question. Thank you for.
Oh, that's okay.
So I guess we don't have any additional questions. So I know it's been about an hour. Thank you, Ellie, again, for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate that. And thank you everyone for joining us. You have our credentials. We will send that again, both my email ID as well as Ellie's. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either of us. Thank you so much.
Thanks again. Yeah, thanks for this opportunity.
Bye.